Wait, what is 5G? And wait, there's a problem with my cell phone? What do I do? How do I handle this? So I'm Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust. We publish research, we develop educational campaigns, and we present to policymakers internationally and in this country. Myself, along with Dr. Davis, who's going to be speaking in a few days and focusing more on the science, just testified at the New Hampshire State 5G Commission. So what happened in New Hampshire was they actually passed a bill, and they have a commission where they are looking at this issue, bringing different experts to testify, including those from industry, those from our federal government, scientists who are studying this, and really looking at this issue, which is what we need to happen. Now, when I first learned about this issue almost a decade ago, I was shocked to find out that in other countries, they're far ahead of us in terms of protections that are in place and awareness about this issue. So Belgium has banned the sale of cell phones designed for children, and specifically because of the radiation. In French Polynesia, they have a public education campaign. This is actually some stills I'm going to show you from a 1-minute video on things that emit electromagnetic radiation in your home and how to reduce them. And you can go on to ehtrust.org and go to our international action section and watch these and share these. We have them translated. But they show all the things that might emit wireless radiation: your phone, your Wi-Fi router, your gaming console, outside, a cell tower, antennas that might be mounted on your roof. It's a small cell. In the nursery, a wireless baby monitor, the computer. In the kitchen, things that also emit another kind of electromagnetic field, extremely low frequency fields, appliances, or if you have a smart refrigerator, wireless security cameras, etc. This is the back of a bus in Cyprus, and they have a translation that they have online for the public education campaign. There's a public education campaign in Cyprus put on by the committee, which is funded by the government. And in this campaign, on the back of the bus, "Don't irradiate me, learn how to protect me." And they have posters and information informing parents and people about how phones and wireless devices emit a type of radiation, and here's how you can reduce exposure. And more importantly, that you should reduce exposure. Why? Because hundreds of scientists around the world are signing appeals and ringing the alarm bell on this based on the body of published, credible scientific evidence. And the emfscientist.org in 2015 is just one of many appeals where scientists who have published research on electromagnetic fields are stating that we must reduce exposure. There's also a 5G appeal to the European Union calling to halt 5G, signed by over, I think now, 240 scientists as well. So what I wanted to do today, because Dr. Davis is going to be focusing more on the science, is talk about messaging, what we are being told, what we are being informed about, and what is missing from that information in the media. This is a poster from the UK. Electrosensitivity UK designed this campaign poster. They were having it put up around in public areas, and it ended up being banned because there were complaints to the UK Ads Council. What it is worth the risk. Is it worth your call? And then there are all these little app symbols, and they say damaged immune system, electrosensitivity, skin disorders, cancer, dementia, depression, and so on. All effects that have been found in scientific research. And that was a few years ago that it was banned. There's another poster, which I'm going to show you soon, which also also got taken down. And yet, we're told that life is easier on the iPhone. And that starts as soon as you turn it on. And my heart breaks that I'm a mom, and I remember having my daughter's friend over, and I asked her to turn the cell phone off, and this was in, gosh, had to be 8th grade. She'd just gotten a cell phone, the girl who came over, and she said to me, well, I don't know how to do that. I mean, she really didn't. It's not that she wanted to be on the phone, it's just she'd never actually turned it off. And we have to learn how to turn off the phone. We have to teach our kids how to turn it off and how to reduce exposure, but really just how to turn it off. And companies need to make phones that we can turn off easily and not have to press a million buttons in order to turn off. So here is an ad. We've got more 5G spectrum than anyone else. 5G will save lives, propel humanity forward, and usher in the utopia that will solve the literal hot mess we're in. I don't believe that ad was taken down, but this one was. This is another one from Electrosensitivity UK, just I think last month. It says, how safe is 5G? And it has quotes from Dr. Martin Pall. I can't read because the way the cursor is here, so I can't actually see my slide for some reason, but I'm seeing it over there. And quotes about the scientific research that the rollout is insane and that we need to halt it. And according to the UK Ad Council, consumers would understand from the ad that there was robust scientific evidence that demonstrated negative human health effects caused by 5G. And so that was just banned in the UK. Now you can go online and see some of their other posters, which are really excellent. They also have all kinds of graphics for social media, as does Environmental Health Trust, and we hope that you'll look at them, share them, get them out, and talk to people about this. Wireless companies warn their shareholders of risk, but not their customers, nor residents who live near the antennas. So the Crown Castle, for example, in their annual report says that if frequency emissions from wireless handsets or equipments in our communications infrastructure are demonstrated to cause negative health effects, potential future claims could adversely affect our operations, costs, or revenues. And we do not currently maintain any significant insurance with respect to these matters. They don't have insurance because no insurance company will cover the cell phone manufacturers in the United States because the risk is deemed high. And there are multiple insurance authority reports, we have them all on our website on Trust, which talk about the rating of cell phone radiation and radio frequency radiation as a high emerging risk. The latest one was Swiss Re, which ranked 5G as off the leash, I quote unquote, off the leash. And they talk about all of the issues with 5G in terms of privacy and also as the biological effects of electromagnetic fields in general and 5G in particular are still being debated, potential claims for health impairments may come with a long latency. So in the meantime, I'm so thankful that around the world, as communities wake up to this, even governments are taking action. And this is actually a poster from the city of Krakow, Poland, with a Let's Be Eco-Digital campaign. They have had conferences bringing in international experts to talk about the biological effects of electromagnetic fields. They have, the poster you see actually says it's a family picnic without a smartphone day. They have contests, photography contests, a day without my smartphone. And there's a Polish artist, Paweł Kuczynski, who has amazing work. Please go online and take a look at his website. It is insightful about digital technology and our lives. Here's an example of a piece. And yet, what we are told and what we're fed is, and these are all ads, happy Wi-Fi, happy life. But I know that I am not the only person. I mean, I could show you reams of research on the psychosocial impacts of what technology is doing to us, how addicted we have all become, especially our children. But I think we all know it from just looking at our own lives or our grandchildren or our children, or even myself. Sometimes I go online to research cell phone radiation and I come out 3 hours later and get lost doing good, important work, but did I really need to do that right then? And what did I miss during that time? Gene Kilborn in Killing Us Softly, which is an excellent video I hope people are familiar with, talks about advertising. Ads sell us more than products. They sell values, they sell images, they sell concepts of love, of sexuality, of success, and most importantly, of normalcy. They tell us who we are and what we should be. And what advertisement is doing by the PR agencies of telecom is creating a culture which they have manufactured. The iPhone 5, loving it is easy. That's why so many people do. And yet what we're not told, we are not told that cell phone radiation is being absorbed into our brains. This is imaging of the rate of cell phone radiation absorbed into the head of a child, and the colors represent the intensity. And you can see that a phone to the head, and the colors are white is the highest intensity in yellow, and then orange to red to purple to blue, and into our bodies. And yet, and I just, in my foray into the internet, was looking at what the government of Korea is doing. They passed a law labeling cell phones, but this is actually a still. Yeah, no, I can see that. I just can't see right here. This is actually a still from a video that the radio research agency of the government has put out, educating people on how to keep the phone away from your head. And you can go online to watch that as well. But yet, in the United States, we're talking about the race to 5G, where all things will be digital. This is about everything that we have now, but much, much more, with a new experimental kind of technology that is going to be moving the information from device to antenna. And this is a still from the CTIA, the wireless industry, when they talk about a race to 5G. We are in a race to 5G. This is something that industry has created, that we are in this race. Really, the race is to put as many antennas in neighborhoods as possible, because what industry is saying is that in order to roll out 5G, they will need to have hundreds of thousands of new antennas in neighborhoods. And I have here an example. The first one, the window, was sent to me by someone who said, look, they just put this in front of my living room window in my apartment in California. Is this okay? The second picture is when I went to San Francisco and I looked out my window at the place I was staying, and I saw this small cell installation. And the third picture is showing what the bottom can look like with all the electrical equipment that goes along with the antenna, which is very unsightly, and also has galvanized people, is what they look like. However, around the world, countries and cities are taking notice of this, and this is a mayor from a city in Italy. There are 130 cities now in Italy that have passed HALT 5G resolutions, 130. And that is due to the work of people who have been going out there, much like the folks who are here tonight, raising awareness, educating, having meetings, talking about this issue, and beginning that conversation and calling for a halt until safety is assured. In India, there is these clubs in local communities get together and put on these incredible art pieces. This is actually an installation. It took 100 people to make. You can walk inside of it. I have a video of it online, and it is about 5G and the impact to birds and to wildlife. You know, art is always the answer, so doing art is a way to communicate this issue as well. And this is just a still also from inside. They have all of these circles with the bird and 5G representing all of the antennas that are going to be added onto the earth. However, in the United States, the CDC says, if you are worried about cell phone radiation, follow the tips below, and we have 2 nice tips. But no one wants to be worried. And hence, our government has failed to protect us on this issue. Wanted to show you our website, ehtrust.org. We also have a link I'll be showing soon for people at the conference to sign up so that you can easily, immediately get some of the information that I'm about to show you today. There are U.S. cities passing protective ordinances on 5G and small cell equipment across the country. In Los Altos, they are prohibiting it in residential areas on the rights-of-way. There are setbacks in other cities, in Petaluma, the town of Bedford, New Hampshire, where I just was. There are also setbacks for schools as well. This is the website of the, oh wait, wrong one, pressed the wrong button, of the 5G State Commission to study the New Hampshire Commission to study 5G. And if you go online, you can read what this group of, I think there's 16 people, including industry, have been doing. They interviewed Dr. Michael Weid, who is the National Institutes of Health National Toxicology Program scientist, studying radiofrequency radiation, the $30 million study that found clear evidence of cancer in the rats, and most recently published on DNA damage. Okay, this study, I'm just going to read the quote from Dr. Weid. This study disproves that the only health effect is heating, as we did not have overheating, but we did see damage. And that is there in the notes of the New Hampshire 5G Commission. Should anyone say that heating is the only cause of damage from electromagnetic fields or from wireless radio frequency? And yet, the New York Times is running one of several, this is a picture, and I am sent this so many times from so many people every time I raise this issue and they're sort of new to it. They say, wait, the New York Times says that it's not really a health hazard. And in this article, it says mainstream scientists continue to see no evidence of harm from cell phone radio waves. This is simply not true. It is true that the authorities that many governments look to and the agencies that are being looked to for answers on this are not saying that there is harm, except for the National Toxicology Program at this time in the United States. But there are so many scientists who are sounding the alarm bell and saying we have a problem because 5G is going to utilize everything we have now in terms of the frequencies and the types of technologies, and it's going to add in millimeter waves, add in new kinds of technology with steerable waves, and it's more, much more radiation, as research has shown. And what people may not be aware of is that this is actually a screen save from the CEO of the New York Times talking with the CEO of Verizon about their new partnership that they're doing on 5G. They have a 5G lab they're doing for journalists. Verizon is sponsoring New York Times subscriptions for high schools, and if you look at the board of the New York Times, you see several prominent members of industry. So I have written the New York Times repeatedly, and they are not changing some of the completely unfactual things in their article. We don't even have an ombudsperson to go to. Who do you go to when the press is wrong on information? Well, thankfully, in Ireland, where this New York Times article ran, Professor Tom Butler actually filed a complaint with the Irish press ombudsperson. And it was found that that article breached Principle 1, truth and accuracy. And, you know, thank goodness there are countries that have an organization that is doing this work, because we have to have a free press in order to have a democracy. If we don't have this information, if the information is wrong, we can't make educated decisions about our lives. For example, cell phones are tested at a distance from the body. I was shocked to find this out. I thought for sure that cell phones could be used any which way and they would be safe. I didn't know anything about the radiation they had when I first learned about this issue. But all the government requires is one test with one phone, and they make sure it meets a limit, which is not even protective. It's sky high compared to where the biological effects are. But buried in the fine print of every phone, every Wi-Fi router, even smartwatches, is a fine print instructions telling us, like the Apple iPhone 5, carry iPhone at least 10 millimeters away from your body. Now, the government of France, that has some of the most progressive work on this issue, started several years ago testing hundreds of cell phones to see, well, what if we tested them at body contact? What would the radiation level be? And they tested phones at 0 millimeters, meaning right at body contact, at 5 millimeters, and at the number that the manufacturer set. So in the United States, the manufacturer can set a distance on the phone, and that's where they will test it for the radiation that is absorbed into our bodies. And these are actually pictures from some of their tests. I don't know if you can see it, but on one side is with the 15 millimeter separation of the Galaxy J3, and on the other side, it's up to the body phantom. We use a very outdated test of a, basically it's like a tub of filled with a sugar liquid to represent us, to test the radiation from the phone, and all they do is measure the temperature and make sure it doesn't get too hot. But when they did this test and they put it up to the body phantom, they found that the majority of them exceeded limits of the ones that they tested at 0 millimeters. And now 17 phones have been taken off the market or updated, software updated, to reduce the radiation so that they meet our government limits. Dr. Marco Rossi, who started the PhoneGate Association in France, is actively working on that. That is another great organization to follow. They're working on, hey, if you have a limit, we need to stick with that limit and not have phones that are exceeding the limit. Now, I have gone to the FDA about this, as have many scientists, numerous times. They acknowledge that the limit potentially could be breached, but say that it wouldn't cause harm, even if it was breached. Research published by Om Gandhi, who is a scientist who actually worked to set and engineer the radiation limits many years ago, and when his research showed that children are more vulnerable in terms of having more exposure proportionate to an adult, he lost his industry funding on this issue. He's one of our advisors, and he published some research looking at the French data and found that if they took the way the French did their measurements and used the way in the United States, the way we do our measurements, that phones could violate US limits up to 11 times. And at this point in France, now several French ministers are calling for 0 millimeter separation distance in phone testing. They're saying phones should be tested at body contact. That makes complete sense. And in fact, there's several laws in France I'm going to be talking about, but just recently they had another order, and in it they say, type of information to appear under the section Precautions for using the appliance. These are just a few quotes. Use hands-free kit or loudspeaker. Keep radio equipment away from the belly of pregnant women. Keep radio equipment away from the lower abdomen of adolescents. Now, almost a decade ago, on one side you're seeing a poster that the city of San Francisco, they unanimously passed the cell phone right to know ordinance, informing people that cell phones emit radio frequency energy, and that if you want to reduce exposure, here's how. That, of course, resulted in a lengthy court battle by the wireless industry, the CTIA, that argued that this was violating the rights of the retailers who would have had to show this poster and inform the consumer when they bought the phones. Leading the charge, there were two lawyers, according to the press release of the wireless industry, was Brendan Carr, who was at that time the lawyer for Wiley Ryan. He is now on the FCC as one of our commissioners, part of the US federal government. Thankfully, the city of Berkeley now has passed, actually several years ago, they passed the cell phone right to know ordinance. And the CTIA again filed suit that it violated their free speech rights. And I'm so thrilled to say that the Supreme Court just affirmed that decision. So now we have this incredible ordinance, even though it may seem like, well, it's just telling us about that cell phones, in order to use your cell phone, you need to follow the guidelines of the FCC. If you carry or use your phone in a pants or shirt pocket or tucked in a bra when the phone is on and connected to a wireless network, you may exceed federal guidelines for exposure to radio frequency radiation. But this is huge because it informs people that phones emit radiation. It also said at the beginning this potential risk is greater for children, and they decided to pull that out in order to have it be successful in the courts. And this is being, the lawyer that represented pro bono, Lawrence Lessig, is doing it pro bono from Harvard. However, we're still being sold, this is something you attach to the diaper, and it says, connecting you and your baby. It goes on the diaper, it tells you if your baby is wet, and there's an air quality monitor as well. You can always be looking at your phone and knowing what's going on. But we're not told that it actually has a fine print warning too. What concerns me is that it says connecting you and your baby. How is this connecting me and my baby, or anyone and their baby? It's disconnecting. We are disconnecting, and I know you're familiar with the designers of our interactive media that are now coming out and saying it is ripping apart the fabric of our society, screens, because of the distractions, the overuse, what's happening to our children. But I can't imagine, I just can't imagine what it must be like to be a parent now. My kids are now high schoolers, which is a real challenge, but with all the devices that are coming at us at such an early age. Now, the FCC came out and said just last month that our limits that we have, that were set 24 years ago, do not need to be updated, and also that they do not need to be fixed to require testing with zero spacing against the body. This is unnecessary, and that is a quote from the recent item that they just put out. And that is why we are suing the FCC right now on this issue. And you can go to our website and learn more about that. I have an image and several images sent to us that we can use in showcasing why this is so important, because women are putting the cell phones in their bra. This is a picture I took at the beach with a man with a cell phone just resting on his chest. And I was there for several hours, and that cell phone was on his chest the whole time. T-Mobile had this on their Facebook page. Is that an LG USA Mobile LG G3 in your pocket, or are you just excited to pre-order it? So companies are not, there's a reason we think it's okay to put the phone in our pocket, because no one told us not to, and we're seeing phones in pockets in advertising. If you go to the manual of this particular phone, it says this device was tested for typical body-worn operations with the back of the phone kept 1 centimeter between the user's body and the back of the phone. And to comply with the requirements, you need to have a minimum separation distance. Now, because of this, there's actually several lawsuits moving forward as well, where the argument is that it's a class action suits, that, hey, if I'd known that when I bought this phone, I might not have necessarily bought this phone, or I might have thought differently, and that's moving forward as well. Here's another one, the G Flex by LG USA. It's the only phone that appreciates your curves. So this is made to go on your body. Well, I'm not going to talk deeply about protectors right now, because if protectors have, they can stop the radiation, that intense amount of radiation from going from one end to the other, but there's a lot of other, so you're not going to get the intense, maybe right where it is. However, you can be exposed in other areas of your body, which is why we recommend eliminating exposures as much as possible, reducing exposures by eliminating the source, actually. So that is our recommendation. So what's the safest way of carrying a cell phone? So I'm going to take questions, but I'm going to answer that. I just want to, the safest way to carry a cell phone is when it's turned off, or to have it on airplane mode with the antennas turned off, all of the antennas off. It used to be that, and if it is on airplane mode, I want to say one thing. You still shouldn't put it on your body or in your bra, because it still has extremely low frequency fields. Every electronic that's wireless will have 2 kinds of electromagnetic radiation, actually, and more, but I'm going to talk about 2 for right now. One is from the battery and the electrical power, and the other is from the wireless antennas that are coming off of it. So when you turn the wireless antennas off, you're still going to have that ELF. That drops off, it's called extremely low frequency fields. It drops off at a distance, so if you have a phone and, or a laptop, I use my laptop all the time. I use it with wired Ethernet, and I have it on a table, not on my lap. Even without the Wi-Fi, it would still have that ELF, especially underneath where the battery is. So just speaking about labeling in perspective, this is from Australia, where they have labeling. The EU has an incredible, for anyone who's been to Europe recently, similar with very graphic images, taking up a lot of the cover of the product. But, how many years? We can't wait all of these as long as it took with smoking to have action on this issue and to have proper labeling. And we are sold laughter, that phones will bring us laughter. You might not be aware that France, I was talking about what they just issued, but they have had this graphic up for a long time. If you hover over each of these graphics, they tell you a new thing. It says protect children and young people even more. You hover over it, it says they're more vulnerable. Make a call with a headset. You hover over that icon they have this on the government website, and it talks about how you want to keep the phone away from the body. Do not call in poor reception areas, because when you're in an area of low signal, the phone is going to go to higher power to reach the cell tower, like in an elevator, in a car, in your basement, or maybe deep in a building where you're trying to you only have one bar. Your phone is emitting a lot of radiation at that time. Now the problem is that if you go in an area of good reception, you're going to get higher full body exposure. But it is not as intense as a cell phone to the body. However, the research on this is showing that even at very low levels, there is an impact at the cellular level. This is modeling done with a cell phone on the lap, looking at the wireless and how the frequencies are absorbed into the body. The first image is showing how it propagates off the laptop. The other is showing the different intensities into the body. We have videos of this on our YouTube channel. We have the engineer who's published on this research on imaging of the head, of laptops on the lap, talking about this research. This is not just me coloring the screen. And yet, the commercials say it is all about the connections you make. And here we have a man with a laptop on his lap, and two children in front of that laptop who are also receiving secondhand exposure from the laptop. But maybe it is all about the connections, because the tech industry has become one of the biggest spenders in Washington, rivaling the pharmaceutical and big business lobbies. According to an article just out in Bloomberg, $62 million in federal lobbying in 2019 by the 5 biggest tech companies. And you can compare that to the $34.7 million by the 5 largest US drug makers. Open Secrets showed 596 lobbyists for telecom, 75% are former government employees. And there's a Harvard report, Captured Agency, which is also on our website, is one of the most important resources. It's from 2015, and it is an investigation into the FCC and our Congress and the money that Telecom is giving to Congress. And this graphic I actually pulled from their information. They have sort of a similar graphic I've added on because that report was in 2015, and a lot has happened since then. They talk about the revolving door between government and the telecommunications industry. So right now we have Ajit Pai, who's our FCC chair, former counsel for Verizon. Before him was Tom Wheeler, who was the former head of the Wireless Association and really laid the groundwork for 5G. We have Brendan Carr, who we talked about, Meredith Atwell Baker, who used to be an FCC commissioner, and now she's the head of the CTIA, the wireless industry, who sued San Francisco, who sued Berkeley, who is pushing this race to 5G. And most recently, Bruce Romano, who is the assistant legal chief at the FCC, is now working for Wiley Ryan, the law firm of the CTIA. And it goes on, and there's more and more. And every time I give a talk, I just gave a talk in my community, and even at the local level, this is happening. So perhaps telecom is ridiculously powerful, but it is not making us powerful. They even our pets. Meet the new dog sitter. I mean, how did this happen? And this is what I think about, and I have pets. I don't have wireless in my house, but I know many people who do. They might sleep on the router. Birds nest on antennas on cell towers because it's warm. What is that doing to them? They're testing 5G on cows. They're testing 5G in agriculture. They're test cities in the United States. But they wear 5G smart collars, and they're watching. There's a whole video about this on Reuters you can watch where they're looking at the milk production. They know where the cows are in the field. They're testing out this technology. There's also actually a lot of ways they're going to be using 5G in agriculture, according to industry. They're also testing virtual reality on cows. Yes. It's not funny, but it's like, how? This is actually the Ministry of Agriculture and Food of the Moscow region. And I thought this was actually a joke. And I suppose it's possible that someone got into this website or made a fake website for this, this government site. But I don't think so. It's been picked up actually in a lot of news pieces. They're using virtual reality to ease the anxiety of the cows so that they produce more milk. And 5G, if you hear about 5G, they are talking about virtual reality as part of what 5G is for, because with 5G, you can move video faster, they say. And these VR headsets are an integral part and being couched as the reason that we need this. They're also testing 5G in schools, especially under-resourced schools. Schools are industry's playground. They can test all their technology, donate and be seen as helping, when really they're gathering information about what works, what doesn't work, how they can make their products better. Yeah, so they're in France, they passed a law, as did actually Israel and Cyprus and French Polynesia, banning Wi-Fi in kindergarten. And then in those countries, they have different laws about wireless in classrooms in elementary school. This is what someone raised that I'll just briefly talk about. So in France, they have the Wi-Fi is off as the default instead of always being on. I mean, why does it make sense to have the Wi-Fi always on? And in Cyprus, there's an order to take the Wi-Fi out of elementary school. And there are many schools. We actually have on the Environmental Health Trust website a list. If you're a parent or a grandparent wondering about this, we have a list with links to all of the schools that are taking measures, removing Wi-Fi. A lot of private schools are removing Wi-Fi from the classrooms as parents raise that issue. And the issue of headaches is very important because there is a body of literature showing headaches from exposure. There are people who are injured, who are getting headaches or having other issues from wireless and cell phone radiation, and when it is removed, they are not as sick. Now, there are kids in schools who are getting sick, and there are several court cases, and we also have that on our website as well. There's also, I don't have a slide on this, but there's several accommodation cases internationally and especially in France where workers have been accommodated because of sensitivities to wireless radiation and electromagnetic fields. And yet, the advertising is showing young children with virtual reality, and that is a cell phone right up to the head. And this is imaging done by Claudio Fernandez and engineers in Brazil universities. And that top image was actually looking at the absorption. If you took the phone and put it in the virtual reality position, how would your skull, your eyes, your brain tissue, the different regions of your brain absorb this radiation? What is the rate of absorption? And here we have those same colors showing how much radiation that potentially could be absorbed. And yet, and I was sent this, I signed up to one of this Let's 5G thing. So industry has this astroturfing where they make it seem like if there's a grassroots organization wanting 5G, but really it's funded by industries, and they send you monthly newsletters about 5G and how much you should love it. This one was about 5G in the classroom and about all the great things that 5G will bring. It will save time. Virtual reality opens up learning. And it's really going to be an explosion. Here are some estimates, and these numbers come from the Small Cell Forum, the Climate Think Tank Shift Report, which I hope everyone is aware of, numbers, and Ericsson, an industry report. 500 billion internet-connected devices will be connected to the internet by 2030. 8.9 billion mobile phone subscriptions worldwide. A 60% growth in production of wireless peripherals, all those little wireless things. You can't even buy a speaker now that doesn't have wireless unless you order it over the internet, at least in my town, and should not be that hard. A 7-fold increase in mobile data, and 70 million small cell tower bases to be installed by 2025. And we have outside at the table with 5G awareness, I brought some of our materials that have that information on it, and also talks about the things that I'm not going to get to today, energy consumption from all of these new devices, and the impact to our climate change. And we also have a flyer that we are getting the word out about 5G, your health and the environment, which I hope that everyone will take as well. This is the swipe and feed. Parents can use the mobile phones while bottle feeding. It's a plastic apparatus you put your phone in. The iPad for potty training. Child-proof your iPad. Now, I actually bought this because I wanted to have it for raising awareness, and it really does exist. It protects the device, but not the baby. There was no pre-market safety testing for long-term exposure of cell phone radiation, certainly on children. And the short story and the sad story, and what broke my heart when I first learned about this, because I was sure that it was a mistake and that, of course, they were safe. Wireless technology was developed for radar and military use. There were a lot of research in the Cold War, a lot of research in Russia and the United States on this issue. In fact, microwaves were first called radar ranges. And the first cell phones came out, but in 1996 was when laws and regulations that we have now were set. It was the Telecom Act was passed, the most heavily lobbied bill at the time. It may still be the most heavily lobbied bill ever. And the EPA was defunded. They were setting safety limits. They were looking at the research and setting limits based on heat, and then they were going to set limits based on protecting from biological effects. But they were defunded. And we took on industry recommendations from industry-filled groups, and they're based on protecting from heat only. One only need look at the minutes from some of these organizations to understand the industry influence. This is from the International Commission on Electromagnetic Safety of the IEEE, the approved meeting minutes. And where is it located? At Motorola Solutions. And also, the chief scientist of Motorola was a co-head to the group that helped set the safety limits for years and years. This is, again, modeling showing...
Children are proportionally...
Oh, sorry. That was actually the engineer speaking. I didn't realize I had the sound on. We have videos showing this radiation and the rate of absorption in the body, because just because it is invisible does not mean it is not there. And that is why we are trying to showcase this, to help people understand that you can ignore it, you can try not to think about it, but it is very much there and being absorbed into our bodies. And our kids are being sold devices. I'm not going to play this video, but it's all showing first steps, first birthday party, first this, first that. It's a Sprint commercial, and then first cell phone, making it seem like it is a rite of passage for a child to get a cell phone. And as Jean Kilbourne talks about, I mean, it does seem like a rite of passage, right? It's like, oh, you're getting your first cell phone. It's the most exciting thing. Your child is just overjoyed. Oh, Mom, when will I get that first cell phone? That is what has happened to us. But that is manufactured by companies, because I remember, and I'm sure many people in this room remember, when cell phones first came out, we could not imagine what a child would possibly need it for. That was like when you got to college. I got it when I started working, and I needed it for safety, supposedly, because my car broke down a lot. And never, I mean, who could have even thought we would be where we were now? But don't worry if your kid can't handle it, if they're not ready for it, because that same company that said, actually this whole video talks about how you have to make sure your child is old enough and is mature enough. But if they're not, they can sell you a plan to block texting during family time so that parents can see what the kids are doing, to filter content, etc. The other thing that's happening in this messaging is promoting binging on devices and on the screens. Join Xfinity for Sofa Sunday, giving you permission to binge. Introducing Binge On, only from T-Mobile. And you can binge on the beach. This beautiful beach. You can look at a screen. Binge, they're talking about binging, like watching whatever you want, whenever you want, as long as you want, show after show after show. I'm shocked now with, we were watching something on Netflix, and we don't actually have a TV, but we do watch videos and that we have for movies. And right when you're done with one show, the next show comes right on. So let's say you're like, when you get stuck in a show, but then the next one comes on, you want to know what happens the next one, and you can just watch, you could watch all night. There's no break. That is what they want. The goal is to have us looking at screens for as long as possible. That is the goal of the designers of the technology, even to our youngest. And yes, we can buy family mode to manage our kids' online activities. Now, there's research that just came out. It was published in JAMA, that was looking at toddlers, children aged 3 to 5. And they found that the more screen use, the decreased integrity of the white matter in the brain. And that's in kids 3 to 5. And I never thought, when I got into this about a decade ago, I just never thought we'd be here, actually, where kids 3 to 5 were using screens, because at that time it was really just phones. But now there's iPads and all manner of wireless devices. This is Dr. Hugh Taylor, Chief of Obstetrics at Yale Medicine. And it's a still from the Baby Safe Project. I hope you will write that down, Baby Safe Project. Take a look at their website and the information that they have to share. In this video, he talks about research he did looking at mice who were pregnant, exposed to the cell phone, and found that the offspring, the baby mice, when they got to be like teenage aged, had hyperactivity, damaged memory, and altered brain function. Close to, as he would say, if mice could have ADHD, that's what they had. Now, there's also research showing damage to animal brains in Turkey and in other countries. There's research out of Switzerland. They looked at hundreds of teenagers, and they found that those who had more hours of the phone to the head after 1 year had memory damage. And that was a replication study. So please go to the Baby Safe Project and take a look at their materials. They have an appeal signed by over 270, I think, educators, scientists, and medical doctors recommending keeping the phone away from your pregnancy. And yet, Elmo has Smarty the smartphone. And Smarty the smartphone, and I love Sesame Street. I mean, I was raised on Sesame Street, and the phone, he's hugging the phone because he loves the phone. The phone tells him things. The phone is smart and helps Elmo learn things. I would love for any parents who want to get involved in advocating to Sesame Street to make a change on this, and instead to teach digital citizenship and how to keep the phone away from your body and how to use technology responsibly. Because kids hug devices. This is the Echo Dot. It's rainbow. And it is for, the advertising is promoting it for children to be in children's room. It has characters that children love that it can listen to. It is being actively marketed to children, except it has a fine print warning. All of these virtual speakers have warnings saying this device should be installed and operated with a minimum distance of 20 centimeters between the radiator and your body. And this child, I pulled this from YouTube where she's singing, she's adorable, and she's singing the song with the speaker hugged to her body. And it is emitting radiation. It's connecting to the Wi-Fi router. But we don't know, but most people aren't aware of that. They're not aware that it's been classified as a Class 2B possible carcinogen in 2011. That was almost a decade ago. And that new science since then has shown that this radiation can cause cancer. The NTP study I talked about, the Ramazzini Institute in Italy did a study with animals using very, very low levels, much lower than NIH, and found the same tumors. There was a study, the same types of tumors as NIH did. Jacobs University did a study looking at animals, giving them a known carcinogen that they knew would cause cancer, and then having a group that had the known carcinogen plus radiofrequency radiation, but at a very low level. And they found that the group that had both exposures had a much higher tumors. And as they state, there's a tumor promotion effect, a synergistic effect between the radiofrequency and something that we know causes cancer. And there's also, the Ramazzini Institute is actually doing research on this right now with their animals, doing combined exposures. Because, of course, we are all living in a world of combined exposures. Well, hopefully, we're going to start talking about it. That's what I hope, that everyone in this room will start talking about it. If you want, when you're learning about, when you're sharing this issue, and you invariably will have someone say, there is no science on that. Go, and they don't want to go to any site except something that comes from the government, is what I found, is go to the National Toxicology Program at NIEHS, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, and go to their page on radiofrequency radiation studies, where they talk about the findings from their research. This is the page, National Toxicology Program, Cellphone Radiofrequency Radiation. And if you sign up at Environmental Health Trust, I'll be sure to send you this as well. I'm going to send you the link to that. On that page, what I should say is, the NTP did this study. It was $30 million. The FDA then issued a statement that they disagreed with the findings. This was a study that they asked for. The FDA asked for this study over 20 years ago. And this is a statement by Jeffrey Shuren saying, "We disagree with the conclusions." But I want to play you Dr. Ronald Melnick. He helped design the study at the National Institutes of Health. He's a 28-year scientist at NIH, and he's retired. So he is presenting on this issue worldwide.
What does the public need to know? There have been multiple studies have found increases in cancer associated with exposure to radiofrequency radiation. This is animals and humans. Because of the widespread use of cell phones, even a small increase in cancer risk would have a serious public health impact. I strongly feel precautionary principles should be promoted by health and regulatory agencies, especially for children and pregnant women. The agencies in the US say, if you are concerned. That puts the burden on the individual. It doesn't say, we are concerned. It should be very straightforward. Precautionary principles should be promoted. Because, as mentioned earlier, risk can be greater for children than adults due to the increased penetration of the radiation within brains of children, and the developing nervous system is more susceptible to tissue-damaging agents. So finally, what is the lesson that should be learned? When dealing with assumptions, I think we've shown that assumptions, in this case, can be wrong, so that we should no longer assume that any current or future wireless technology, including 5G, is safe without adequate testing. Thank you.
And I'm so thankful that Dr. Melnick is one of our scientific advisors now. We do several webinars with him. They are all online. Please go online and watch the latest one where we talk to him about the action by the FCC saying that radio frequency radiation limits, that are wireless limits, are safe. And I'm thankful for his courage and for the courage of all the scientists who are speaking about this all the time, trying to educate our policymakers. Now, on that page I talked about, there's a section called FAQs. When you go to that page at NIH on cell phone radiation, click on the FAQs, and you'll see a long list of questions, and in there is the following question. Have you changed your cell phone use or what you recommend to your family? These are questions that were asked to NIH scientists of the NTP. And it states, NTP scientists have become more aware of their usage and follow FDA's tips for reducing exposure to cell phone radio frequency radiation. And those tips are, reduce the amount of time spent using your cell phone and use the speaker mode or headset to place more distance between your head and the cell phone. This is the first time a federal agency has stated that their scientists are reducing exposure. And I am so thankful that they updated their page to have this information. A few years ago, the CDC said that we recommend cautions like other countries did, and almost within weeks it was removed off the website after industry-connected scientists contacted them, actually, on this. Cancer is only the tip of the iceberg, as I've talked about. The published research shows DNA damage. The NIH study found DNA damage in both mice and rat groups after only 14 weeks. Memory and brain damage, sperm damage, synergistic effects, headaches, oxidative stress, impacts to bees and insects and trees. And I know Dr. Davis is going to talk more about the science. Yet we're seeing commercials. This was the full-page ad in the New York Times, that Verizon 5G will help doctors see cancer like never before. It's part of the Verizon's Humanability campaign. Humanability is a word coined by industry. It's a new word, to promote their products. They also created the word small cell, even though there's nothing small about a small cell. It's really microwave antennas close to us. They also coined the word street furniture for the electrical equipment. And the way language is used is shaping the conversation. And we have to help shape the conversation and clarify what is going on. Because this is not street furniture. In fact, in the image here, where you have the two people standing, she woke up, the homeowner woke up and found this in front of her home and was like, what is going on? And found out it was for a future installation. It actually ended up getting removed after the news coverage that ensued. There is pollution, abuse, environmental destruction, and disregard for human rights at every stage of the life cycle of every wireless, especially wireless devices, but our electronics. Something that we could talk for several more hours and have a whole several conferences on would be conflict minerals, the raw minerals that are mined and used in our phones. It's fueling wars in other countries. We have young children who are going down and mining these minerals, and of course getting sick. I don't think, if we told that 10-year-old that got their first phone that children were dying for this phone. They called, what are we doing? And please learn more about conflict minerals. Inhumane working conditions. That picture is actually showing suicide nets on a company that's manufacturing parts for phones. Because the workers were in there for so long with such terrible conditions that they were jumping out of the windows. Toxins in manufacturing. So they're making the phones, they're inhumane working conditions. Then when you get the parts and putting them together, they are being bathed in toxic chemicals, which are then poisoning those workers. There's a case in Korea of so many young women in their 20s with leukemia because of the exposure to all the toxic chemicals, and lawsuits moving forward on that. Then there's the radiation exposure when you get the phone, and then there's the electronic waste, the e-waste. We have a huge problem. These devices are made to break. They are made to last for just a short amount of time. You know how that electric meter we used to have lasted from, decades and decades and decades? And now we have these new smart meters which emit radio frequency radiation, which really only last a few years. Then you have to get new ones. Same with our phones, same with all of these devices. As soon as you get them, they're old, and you have to go get a new one. There's also another aspect to the pollution. We think we're recycling devices. A lot of times, when you quote unquote recycle your cell phone, it's actually going to another country where there's informal recycling happening. I just did a talk on this with a lot of the reports that are done on this, and it's really kids and families picking apart your phone, getting poisoned by the parts in the phone, the lead, all the toxic materials that are inside the phone when you open it up. So we have a problem. This is not a sustainable technology. It is not sustainable. It's not environmentally responsible to move forward as we are moving forward. And yet, introducing Verizon 5G Home, be free. Is this freedom? Now, in addition to research showing damage to trees, of which there is a large number, both trees and plants, you can go on our website to find that, I wanted to raise this because I was sent this article, it's from Devon Live. Trees are being trimmed and cut for this technology. The headline was, "Anger as a 100-year-old tree butchered by broadband company." The project manager was quoted as saying, "It's only natural for people to feel attached to their local environment, and we're sorry to hear of Mr. Sheard's distress," that's the man who complained that the tree was cut, "at the tree's altered appearance. This tree had overhanging branches that were interfering with BT phone lines. We needed to deliver a better service to our customers in the local area, and we also wanted to make the tree safe." And this is not a lone example of trees being trimmed. When in Washington, D.C., from where I am, it is a test city, and at the 8-hour hearing that was held, I am so thankful for there are so many tree groups in D.C. who came and testified for the trees, including the Sierra Club and other groups, saying, we have to protect the trees. We don't know how this is going to affect them. You can't just just roll this out. But yet they are in D.C. People are not able to stop the rollout. We will get 100% of what you love. This is my friend Callie, and I have an interview with her. I hope you will watch it. She wants her story to be told. She had a laptop on her lap for years, and she developed cancer right under where she held the laptop. And she's one of many people who contact us with stories about having used devices for lengths in certain parts of their bodies. And she is very sick right now, and it has metastasized, but she tells her story, and I hope you will pass it on and watch Callie's story on our YouTube video. Cally. When you go to our website at ehtrust.org, go up to the top, there's, you click on the YouTube icon, and then you go to our playlists. And we have playlists on Wi-Fi, on 5G, on children, on public service announcements, and so forth. And I believe that we can fix this. We have to build a movement for healthy technology, and it's very simple, actually, as hard as it may seem. First, awareness and information. Start the conversation, and we're in the conversation in this town thanks to the work that is happening here. And then we will have action when people are empowered. But people need the information and they need awareness, and that is why we can't keep silent on this. Please go to ehtrust.org/truth. We made a page especially for people who are watching, myself and Dr. Davis, where we will have information that you will immediately get of everything that we're talking about. And you'll also be signed up for our newsletter that comes out once a month, so you can learn more and have resources to share. There's also 5G crisis and 5G awareness. Oh, this is Dr. Davis will be talking in a few days. The message really is getting out. We had the first 3-day conference dedicated to the impact of electromagnetic fields for medical doctors, where medical doctors and health practitioners got continuing education credits for hearing experts present and doctors present on this issue. And this is just a picture from that conference that was this fall. This is our sheet on climate change and 5G, where we talk about the energy use and the impact to trees. It is all linkable. So when you get this sheet, you can print it out, but you can also just email it. And if people want to know, well, you're saying a fact, but is that true? And it goes right to the report where it comes from. And here's an example, and I have some of these here where we have, we decided to design this after a nurse came up to us and said, I need to hang something, she works at a school, in my office, I want something about how to reduce exposure for the kids. So we started designing these posters for people to put in their office. This is in Denmark, and these are pictures just out from the Stop 5G protests that are happening around the world. Australia, in Switzerland, the leading newspaper, anti-5G protests held across Switzerland. And yet, we're being told that phones will help us have a sense of control, when really it's out of control. And that we can keep track of our family, or that our phone will protect us. I am told over and over again, you really need to give your girls a phone because they need it for protection. And the thing is, how will the phone, there are a few instances where it could be argued, but for the most part, how will a phone protect you? If you were in all those terrible situations that we can think of, will your phone protect you? You have to know what to do in those situations. If there is an active shooter in a school, I do not want my child actually on the phone. I want them getting safe. I want them knowing what to do in that situation. I don't need them to contact me. I want them to get safe. If someone is attacking you and pulling you into a car, what, are you going to break out your phone? And, I mean, you have to kick them and get out and not go in the car. We have to be teaching our kids how to live without their phones on and to be able to handle any situation without us. That is our job as parents. And yet we're being sold that this is the owlet. It goes on the foot of the baby, and it's radiating. It also has a thing that it will be less anxiety. And it has a fine print warning on the camera. And it reminds me, the wireless smart meters remind me of DDT wallpaper that we used to have in the 40s. It was wallpaper impregnated with DDT. And it says in the advertisement, medical science knows many common insects breed and live in filth, et cetera, et cetera. And it also says non-hazardous to children and adults, to pets or clothes. Now, one of the leading scientists, Dr. Leonard Hardell, who worked on DDT years ago and called it out as harmful, is now one of the leading scientists working on cell phone radiation and 5G. Dr. Hardell's research, he's an eminent epidemiologist and medical doctor, cancer researcher, who has shown a relationship between people who use cell phones in the long term and the development of brain cancer. This is Switzerland, 5G protest, Italy, Cyprus, in Greece, Kalamata, which was a test city for 5G. They actually halted 5G. They have videos of them from a few months ago. They're so excited about this new technology. And then once the people understood what was going on and what it meant, they organized, and now they have stopped that contract. So please learn more at ehtrust.org/truth, where you can sign up to get connected with us, get connected with a local group in your town. Other groups are Physicians for Safe Technology, mdsafetech.org, Americans for Responsible Technology. Oh, I apologize, the lines, the URLs are not showing up. 5G Crisis, what is 5G? And SafeG, because there are solutions. You can get a corded landline. We can use corded connections as much as possible to offload a lot of that need. So I only have about 4 minutes left. I want to go over some of this, but we have all of these materials outside. We also have safety cards that you can share with your friends and family about keeping the phone out of your pants, how to protect your body and protect yourself. Cards that have the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations, our nation's largest group of children's doctors. They have recommendations to reduce cell phone radiation. And most people are not aware of that. Even pediatricians are not fully aware of that. Be aware of how close children are when you're using a phone. You can turn the antennas off your phone when you're not using them. Like if you have to use a phone for some reason, you don't have to have all of those antennas on radiating all the time. You can turn off the Bluetooth if you're not using it. Turn off the Wi-Fi if you're not using it. There's a lot of ways that we can reduce our exposure, but only if we know how. Also if we even know it is a thing. Some people don't even know my phone emits radiation. That was like what happened to me. I was like, what? There's also, and we have this on our website under international actions, The Cyprus government has incredible public service announcements about this. Be aware that every wireless device is a two-way microwave radio connecting. So your wireless laptop is connecting with the Wi-Fi router. Your phone is, just like your phone is connecting with a cell tower. And your phone is actually also connecting with all the other wireless devices it's chatting with Bluetooth. Or I went to someone's house and I was with the dad and he was cooking and he goes, oh, hold on, I have to turn the heat down. And he actually picked up his phone and he turned the heat down. And I couldn't speak. I didn't even, but that's happening. There's all of these interconnected devices, but do we need that? He was standing next to the oven. So, you know, we can fix this if we know the information. Switch to an analog meter. Talk to your elected officials about that. An analog meter is the only way to go. And there need to be free opt-outs. There are local smart meter groups in your community, I'm sure. Laptops and tablets should always be on a table, not on a lap. This is from the New Jersey Education Association recommendations. We have this available for everyone. There's a 2-page you can print out. Hardwire all the devices like your printer, projector, and boards at schools. Schools can make these changes. On our website, we have a whole section on Wi-Fi in schools. I hope you will go there. We have a Q&A that says, like, what are the best materials to share? What are examples of schools that are doing this? We want to have everyone have this information so you can be informed and make an educated decisions about your next steps. Thank you so much.